And if we have our first candidate here, but if you have a question already in mind, you can come up and sit in the chair so we can wait in line then.
Good morning, dear Thai and dear panel. I thought I returned to Deer Park this time to learn more skillful ways of having conversations with people. But through the Dharma talks and the experience of our walking meditation this morning, I thought, the whole world is an awfully big place to get my heart around at any given time. And I thought, I'm getting lessons from Deer Park as I'm here because I'm spending time with Deer Park. And I would really be interested to hear from those of you who have spent more time here and gotten to know this place, how you listen to Deer Park, the place, given our context of earth and climate, how you listen to this place, because I see how well it's been taken care of over the 10 years I've been coming here.
Dear Thai, dear community, dear friend. So as has been mentioned, I've been away for a while, but I'm kind of inspired to offer a response because I think I have that kind of fresh eye, when you come back after being away and you see the miracle of Deer Park. So I arrived at 11 in the evening, and in the morning I was just a bit too late to come for sitting, and I thought, that's okay, I've just arrived. And so I heard the bell going, so I won't go in. So I walked back up, and then something like fairies were grabbing at my heels and saying, come on, walk this way. So I hiked up the ridge for the sunrise, and everything was so familiar, and I've been away for a while, and it felt like the rocks and the plants and the birds have been there all this time I've been away, and it was like this kind of reunion feeling. And I could even, although so many things have happened, everything felt immediately familiar, and the paths. I said, I go left here, that's what I remember this rock. How could you remember a rock? And I remember this little path here and twist and turn. And everything was just so refreshing, and I touched a lot of happiness in that reunion. So when feeling that we have a relationship with the land is such a joyful thing. To listen is to be in connection. And so it didn't require so much effort, but to be on my own and in the morning, and to have that fresh eye, just because I just arrived, and this kind of reunion thing, it really catalyzed a feeling of wow, because I know that when we stay somewhere a while, that we get invested in the business and office things, and we get into the kind of the business of Deer Park or something like that, And the beautiful thing about Deer Park is you only have to walk up a little bit, and you get this incredible perspective. Like zooming out and just looking. That's. And so the conditions of being on your own, allowing yourself to touch the joy of connecting with the nature. The listening comes naturally, and I myself don't do so much. When I was here, I was actually here in total of 3 years. There was a short period where I did the landscaping, and I think it was Laura that just reminded me that we planted a tree outside together. She said, "Look how it's grown," And so I know there's so many friends that do so much to, like you say, take care of the land, and I'm very grateful. I remember, but I think the first ingredient to taking care is love, connection, relationship, that you actually care. You actually care about the place. You value it because you get so much joy from it. And I remember, Ty walking one time I had walked with Ty around, and even also Ty doesn't get his hands dirty with gardening as much, but he pays attention to all the trees, and he would say, "What's happened with this tree?" He knew that this tree needed more attention, and he would be very aware of the life around and what was going on. So, I don't know if that's connecting to your question. Is there something, somewhat, yeah? Somebody else want to offer something? What's the missing part for you?
I do think the caring attention, taking the time to pay attention, and caring enough, and I guess then the answers come as to what that little tree might need. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm trying to anchor myself here in Deer Park so that I can extrapolate that to the world, to my part of taking care of the world. So I thank you. And the joy, thank you for that reminder.
Yeah.
dear Thai, dear Sangha. My question concerns mindfulness principle 2, pursuit of right livelihood in the United States of America, working in 2020. I represent the interests of violent and dangerous people and work hard to do that. Many other people work for corporations or businesses that kill people or destroy the planet. And even if we don't, we probably indirectly support them in other ways. And in any event, all of the money flows freely, and so we are all connected in this capitalist, destructive, violent machine. What does pursuing right livelihood mean in the United States, working today in 2020?
Dear Thai, dear beloved community, thank you for your question, and that this has been a question throughout my life. What is right livelihood? I worked in a corporate setting for many years in an environmental and sustainability role, and always felt I was doing right livelihood in my work, but it was part of a large corporation, and for me, I worked for this corporation because they had ethics and a moral code, and that was important to me. I don't think I could have worked there otherwise, and that corporation was the most important thing was doing the right thing, and that was just not the right thing for the business, but for people and our environment. And so I think that right livelihood, looking at it from my perspective, is something where you are engaged in doing something for our planet and for people. And it could be in various different roles. We were lucky enough in our corporation to allow people to work up to 15% of their time on things that were important to them. And so even someone in a role, in a business role, in a technical role, could work on preventing pollution, work on social issues, volunteer for Habitat for Humanity and different things to contribute to society. So I think that it's a question that we should all ask ourselves: are we engaged in right livelihood, and are we doing something that we can wholeheartedly be engaged in and still be protecting and preserving our planet and reducing the suffering of all living beings? So.
Hello, everybody. My question is a little uncomfortable for me to ask, but has been confusing me and bothering me for a little bit. Is it okay for violence to happen if it means that it helps many, many people? And a couple of examples that keep going through my head are, could slavery have been stopped without violence? Could we have abolished that without the act of violence? Another one is, I feel like this country, I love this country, and I love all the beautiful things around me. But the foundation of how America was founded is confusing to me, because there was a lot of suffering that had to have happened for us to feel so happy here today. If those are our ancestors, and our ancestors are us, do I condone what they did? How should I feel about what happened in the past? And is it okay for me to feel very grateful for what we have today, based on all of the suffering people had to go through?
Thank you for your question. I have to bend down to see you through the orchid. Thank you. I believe Ty said at one point that, and I hear your question as two parts: violence and the structure that this country was built on. I don't know if I have a good answer for the violence piece, although I do believe I have heard Ty say that the first thing we have to have is no anger in us. And if we can make a compassionate action without anger that is beneficial, then that may be right action. As far as the founding of this country was built on atrocious conditions, slavery and genocide, and many people, in particular white people, have benefited from those conditions. And what do we do about that? I can only say how I practice with it, which is to continually decolonize my mind and my actions, to keep getting under them. I believe I was born into a colonial mind before I had a chance to really make a decision whether my mind would be colonized. Like this idea that white is good and white people benefit is so underpinning so many things implicitly, not explicitly. I'm not talking about Nazis or the KKK, but in so many tiny little unseen ways.
And so our practice is to keep looking deeply, to keep unearthing the truth, to grow our compassion, and to take actions that come from that. And for me, at least, that is more than a lifetime of work.
One, two. You see, we're talking between each other here. We thought nobody will see it, but you did. Yes, I think it is a question which concerns everyone born in the US or not. It has a long tradition, and now this orchid is in my way with you. I would like to answer the first question, is it okay to have violence? I attended a Dharma talk with Tay in, I guess it was 2012 in Plum Village, where a French soldier asked this question. And he was stationed in the Near East, or it doesn't matter. He said, what do I do in this situation? I'm a soldier, and I see, let's say I'm in a marketplace full of people, and I see somebody opening his or her jacket and having like these bombs there and is about to fire them up and kill hundreds, if not, many, many people. And I have that gun in my hand. So am I allowed to kill somebody in order to save other lives? Is it allowed, is it okay to be violent and take somebody's life in order to protect many lives? And Tai said exactly what you also said. He said, first you have to generate compassion. Of course you have to react too, right, when you see this is happening. But he said it has to come from a place of compassion, so not anger. You could feel many things in that very moment. It's a very short moment, but it's also a very long moment for things going on in your brain, especially when you are a person who reflects on these things and values and reveres life in general. So is it okay? And how can you that quickly differentiate? Where does my reaction come from? Do I hate this person? Do I do this out of fear because I have been trained, or is it just like I'm doing it without any emotions, seeing an enemy? Or do I feel compassion for all these people? And as often, like in situations of shock or so, there are milliseconds and we have hundreds of thoughts. But he said it is important that we generate compassion. And if you generate compassion for the lives of all these hundreds or many people, you can shoot one person who is about to take the lives of 100. That was his answer. And it was discussed a lot, and it's a question that's very hard to answer in general. But that's an answer that I would offer to us, so I want to pass it on to you. As for the other part, and I especially heard you saying, because it resonates with me, is what about our ancestors? Like, shall I be angry with them? Right? And I think the same thing applies for our ancestors too. We have to stop for a moment and see where do our emotions for our ancestors come from, this blame, this shaming. And we look back, or you look back now to the history of the US. There was Europe, there were the Romans, there were the Ottomans, there were the Greeks, the Egyptians, there was Persia, there were the Mongolians, there were China, all these big empires like are based on slavery and injustice and a lot of violence and suffering. So this is a continuation until a time, and it's still happening, but until a time, and somehow this is a dawning is happening somehow, that our consciousness has changed in a way that we say this is not okay, and we can do different. We have other means, and we have other technology or knowledge, and we don't need to do this anymore, and we need to reconcile with those who we have caused suffering. So I would see the larger picture. So the US are not the founders of suffering or of slavery, but they continued it. And if we as monastics look back into our own families, because we have habit energies that we bring into the community, and you have to be very open and in the community, because there are many opinions, there are many cultures, there are many ages, there are many personalities, and you're not always right. Even you think, you know, I'm really right, because your profession was to be right, or you know this matter very well, and you say they really don't know, but if they really don't know and they don't accept it, so you have to have certain openness to live in the Sangha. And we look back and we can see, where is my stubbornness coming from? Where are my habit energies coming from? And you see, they come from my family. They've been handed on to me. And we have these wonderful guided meditations, seeing our parents as 5-year-old children. And we see that their suffering they handed and passed on to us has been transmitted to them from their parents. Now, I cannot be mad at my dad anymore. Shall I be mad at my grandfather now, you know? Here we're looking for someone. Where did it start, and where's the knot? Where do I start with? And that's my point. I don't think there is a point we can start with. It goes so far back, because my grandparents had been transmitted from theirs and theirs and theirs. So, but what we do now know is, what you do now know is that you don't want to live like this. So there's this dawn happening here too, a breaking point. Someone like all our monastics, we brought these habit energies with us, but there's something within us that made us stop and turn around and look back and see, my ancestors have been transmitting a lot of things to me, and a lot of things I really benefit from, and I really pass on to people around me, to planet Earth, and they are healing, they are nourishing. And I bring a lot of joy and love to the world, because I've been taught this by my ancestors. And many things are harmful for me, have been harmful to me, not helpful, hurting, painful, but also to my parents and my grandparents. And I pass them on to other people. If I am not able to stop and see what's going on, is that okay to do so? So we don't know where it started, but we know where we are. We are here, and we are asking ourselves this question. And this is a great opportunity to look into our habit energies, and to look at our ancestors with compassion and with love, and also seeing the good things they have been transmitting to us, saying thank you for this, and saying for the bad things, let's call them bad things, for the things that hurt, that are painful, that are harmful, we can turn around also with a love and say, dear ancestors, I got your back, you know? I got it. You didn't know, you didn't have the practice, you didn't have the spirit of the time, the zeitgeist was not like that, you didn't have the conditions. But here I am, because of you, because everything what happened between you and me, I'm here, and I'm recognizing this, and I want to do something about it. And I start with myself in this moment, by looking at you and reconciling, as you said. You said it yourself. So you know somehow we can only live together when we connect with each other and when we understand each other. And Tai also says you can never hate somebody if you understand them. If you can never hate a friend. So look back with compassion and see also where you are and what are you able to. And this is a very grateful thing, to look back and be grateful for all your ancestors, whatever they transmitted it to you, because they also gave you the wisdom to be right here and see that.
I'm going to keep you on the seat a little bit. I want to thank Brother Nokom for this wonderful response as well, and the response of Naomi. I just want to add, when we reflect on the history of America, we also should seek inspiration from people like Martin Luther King and Thai and Gandhi, and also the ways that in which people have been able to ancestors that have found not just a non-violent strategy, but true non-violence in their heart to meet violence going on, be it social injustice, etc. And their legacy is huge. And so we also connect with that, and that's also they are also our ancestors, and they're also human. They went through their own path to get to that readiness, that capacity to show up in that way. And they discovered that compassion energy is a greater force than violence. And yes, there can be these situations where you can say, but what if you're in this situation? And then we can say, okay, there can be a case where to kill is the compassionate thing. But before we get to that, there is so much to do with cultivating compassionate energy. And that is a work which we do through our practice and as a Sangha. And it's not to run away from hard questions and say, everything peaceful here, but to actually have the courage to cultivate compassion, even when, this understanding that Brother Nokom talks about is a huge part of that. And so thank you for the question, and also for the right livelihood question, to say that it's part of a path. It's not just, right livelihood is part of what we call the Eightfold Path in Buddhism. So if you're practicing right livelihood, or you see that you're not able to, you can cultivate other parts of the path, right action in your situation, right speech, right thinking, seeing with the eyes of the non-dualistic eyes, seeing the situation you're in, seeing that it's made of so many causes and conditions, and allowing yourself to take that step back and saying, okay, so how can I bring right action into this situation? Okay, my situation is not, I can't contribute to, this company doesn't seem to be contributing to right livelihood, and I'm in this company, but is there something I can do within that? And trusting path unfolds more and more to offer you opportunities, but we have to be ready to take those opportunities, and that is a question of cultivating the practice so that our mindfulness is strong, our concentration is strong, our capacity, our compassion to be able to step in when the opportunity does come, and it will come. There will be opportunities where we can show up and make a difference. So thank you.
Dear Ty, dear panel, dear community, I've been thinking a lot about death, more than usual, because in the last year and a half, three very important people in my life have passed. And for two of them, I had the good fortune and the blessing of being with them in their dying and death. And I feel like I received so much more than what I gave in terms of what it means to be open-hearted and truly present in such an important and vulnerable time in our life cycle with another human. And it's had me thinking more about how to prepare not only for dying and death, but to prepare for the continuation after that. So in this practice, so much of the teaching focuses on our breath. You know, coming back to the present moment, coming back to our bodies, coming back to ourselves as earth, and using the breath as almost like our home base, so to speak. And it's a beautiful practice, and it's, for me, a guarantee to come back to the present moment by coming back to my breath. So my question is, when we leave our bodies and we no longer have our body breathing to come back to, in that transition time, in that bardo, soon after death, where is our focus? And how do we train now for where to place our mind and our consciousness when we no longer have that precious breath in our body to bring us home?
Batter up. Dear Thai, dear brothers and sisters and dear friends, thank you for your question. What comes to mind first for me is when you're speaking about the breath and coming back to your breath, and that constant coming back to your breath, to feeling alive and feeling truly present. I'm like, are you sure that you are alive in each breath? Because every breath that you take is a breath closer to death in itself. And every breath that you take in again is life happening again. Because we only think of our lifespan, and this is what Sister Dee spoke about in her first Dharma talk, is from 80 years, 40 years, 50 years, however X number amount of years is our lifespan. And we're so used to thinking in a linear way, just from point A to point B and straightforward, but we have not clearly seen ourselves in a circular way, how we radiate our life and our life continues. And the question for me is, how am I continuing now in each breath that I take, rather than where would I continue when there's no longer a body for me to take a breath? And the practice that we offer is to be able to recognize our own continuation in each breath, in each step that we take, through our children and our grandchildren. How we breathe now will determine how our children and grandchildren will breathe also. So not seeing this body, the organs, the intestines, cased in a sack of skin as your only limits. You're not limited by just the sack of skin. and all the other living organism inside of it. You've gone beyond that. And if you see yourself preparing for the end of this sack of skin, then you will suffer. Because in reality, we are dying in each moment. Every time you take a shower, all the dead skin cells, and it renews itself. We are, again, Mother Earth renewing all of the cells and all the little organisms that we cannot see. So the rebirth is happening every moment and death is happening every moment. But to think the idea of where your mind goes, when the conditions are sufficient, the mind will come together. When the conditions are no longer sufficient in this sack of skin, then it will be somewhere else in your children, your grandchildren. So if you're looking for the mind in an object outside of you, you will never find it. If you're looking for the mind inside of you, you will never find it. It just happens as it is, just to be and to recognize that it is there. So yeah, the continuation of our own life is not just within this body. As monastics, we don't have biological children. We live a celibate life. We don't have kids of our own. But you cannot say that young child who comes to Deer Park is not our continuation. If we teach him or her how to breathe and how to smile, he or she will take that to her school, his school, and to show all the children how to breathe and how to smile. So it is not the form that we are looking for as a continuation. It's not the spirit either, but it's the essence of our own being, because you and I are not two separate sack of skins. We are all one, flowing together in this cycle, what we call a cycle of life. But it's just every single moment a continuation of life. And it's not one circle, and we come around full circle again, but it's spreading in many different directions, not just a linear direction from point A to point B. And so breathing in, I know that I'm breathing in, and breathing out, I know that I'm breathing out, and I know at the same time my brothers next to me are also breathing in and breathing out. And my children in front of me are breathing in and breathing out. And my ancestors behind me are also breathing in and breathing out. So there is no beginning and there is no end. And so the practice is not to find where we're going to go. The idea of reincarnation is probably misunderstood. Reincarnation in every breath, every step that we take, because we renew ourselves emotionally, physically, and spiritually. We are reborn in each breath that we take. We are reborn emotionally with each step that we take, because we are more in touch and more in contact with those around us. And so the practice is in that, to be able to be in touch and to see your own continuation in many aspects of life. You are not limited in this sack of skin, in these eyes. You're not limited in these eyes, these hair. I don't have any hair, but in your hair, it's just a clothes, garments that you can change, and you can play hide and seek with yourself and to see where you are at in the trees. And the brother Fablai planted the trees here 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and he sees himself in that tree, how much it has grown. And so it's not just this form that you are looking for, but the spirit or the essence of your true being in every person that you encounter. And that is the legacy that you can leave behind. And that you free yourself from the fear of death. What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? Will I ever have the chance to breathe again? And that I'm already breathing in hundreds and millions of people that I have encountered. They breathe for me, and I have breathed for them. I have walked for them, and they are walking for me. Thank you. Yeah.
Dear community, dear Sangha, dear friends, brothers, and sisters, I would like to have a question about Buddha's thinking about power of attraction. And also, I would like to know the Buddha's thinking about when we are in the state of no silence, like when we're practicing meditation, and our mind has become really quiet. Do you believe that we can experience a state of connection with a higher consciousness, and which we may call God, and to get intuition and get to direct us and guide us? Do you believe in such a thing in your meditation? So 2 questions. Thank you.
Quick answer to that. I fall asleep once I meet that moment where there's nothing happens. And somebody speaks to me, then I'll probably get insight, but I will after.
Thank you for your question. In meditation, there are different states that can be reached, jhanas, and so there are different levels, but it's not something that in meditation that I personally strive for. If it happens, it happens. And I did, from my own personal experience, it is, has been kind of a tricky path of reaching these other states of consciousness, and that it's easy to become attached to that. And so in meditation, one time I was at Plum Village and had reached a different state of consciousness while meditating, and it was very pleasant. And the next day, when I came to sit morning meditation, I went into the hall, and of course I went and sat in the same spot. And nothing happened. And so, yeah, I think that while there are different states of consciousness that you can reach, and it may be some physical manifestation that happens in that, like having the chills or some physical thing happening. But I find that it's better to just have a concentration in my meditation, and to first with the breath, and there may be some object of concentration, and then eventually they're in concentrating, looking more deeply, and that to have some insight come out of that after the meditation. But yeah, it's from my experience that it's best not to try to do reach these states, and that it may just happen from your concentration.
Have you heard about it, like which you put your mind in, you attract and power? Like, yeah, like they don't believe, they kind of think that there's no coincidence and things happen because your mind is set up so much concentrated on something, and you're living with it, and you attract those things to. I just want to see if how does Buddhism think about that?
May I just say, I think we have 5 more minutes and we have 2 more people in the row. Would it be fair to have everyone one question? No problem. And then we give the others also a chance.
Thank you.
Also one question? So we received one question on a paper, so we would like to answer that. Nomi will read it after we're hearing the sound of the bell.
This is a question from the bell. It says, "Dear Thai, dear community, thank you for taking my question. People say nice things about me, like you've come so far in the practice, or I love you, or you're so compassionate, but I don't see that. I don't see myself the way other people see me. How do I develop that insight?" I would say it doesn't really matter how anybody sees us. Is this mic working? Okay. What matters is our own self-acceptance of who we are and growing into the best self each of us can be. Thai would say, if you're an oak tree, you can't be a pine tree, but be the best oak tree you can be. That we all have different ways of being. And I believe that, for me, practicing self-acceptance. So when we are fed by those ideas, superiority, inferiority, or equality, and how do we practice getting out of all three of those complexes? If we just accept ourselves the way we are, and in some ways, destroy your reputation. That sounds counterintuitive. For anyone this is a great concern about, I love Thay's book, The Novice, which I believe is a Vietnamese parable. Is that correct? The Novice? Yeah. Such a beautiful book about, it's not about your reputation, it's not about what anyone thinks of a person, but how do we actually be, even if we're perceived to be bad or wrong? How do we accept ourselves and work with that to be the best oak tree we can be?
Dear Thay, dear Sangha, dear panelists, my question is about climate activism. And I'm doing a lot of climate activism at my university. And my question is about how to bring back mindfulness into that movement. And I see a lot of hatred and blame at different people and different structures, like capitalism is to blame, or the fossil fuel industry. And I see that sometimes there are differences of opinions about how to move forward, even though we all agree that we need to do something. And so with the recognition that I can't be the hero of the movement, and that I have to engage people and have a community-led movement with a lot of different voices, how can I bring back a mindful and grounded perspective to combat the climate crisis?
Dear Thay, dear community. Yes, thank you for your question. I'm currently working on that same issue as you, and how can I bring mindfulness to climate activism? And I'm working with the Extinction Rebellion right now, and it's important to have mindful direct action being taken, and something that will benefit all, the activists, and I think in the end have better results. One of the things that I see in working with that group is that people who have been there for a year now are getting burnt out, and there's a lot of stress in doing these actions. And we recently did a meditation mob as part of a nationwide, actually a global effort on a Sunday afternoon. And it was very powerful for those people to do what. it was very powerful to do the walking meditation together, and it was outside in actually in Minnesota. We had 6 inches of snow that morning, and then just before we started walking, the sun came out, and it was so beautiful. We walked out on a frozen lake with the glistening snow, and a lot of people were really, it opened their hearts to nature and to the earth in a different way than taking direct action of some other kind. So I think bringing that to these groups is really important for that group and for our world, that we are acting non-violently and mindfully in all of this work, that it has benefits for society and for us as well. And so I'm also working with other communities. So whatever group of climate activists you work in, I think wonderful things can happen with collaboration with other faith groups. There's in Minnesota, where I live, there's Interfaith Power and Light group that is working on various issues, including a pipeline going through Minnesota, bringing tar sands to the Great Lakes, and affecting indigenous people and going through their land. So I think that joining forces with that voice and other voices from other faith communities can bring that spiritual strength. And Ty talks about that we need a spiritual revolution and a great awakening to really address these environmental issues. And so I see that the more we can bring our mindfulness practice to that, the more benefit there will be for mankind.
Dear brothers and sisters, thank you for your question. The lunch bell has just been invited. I'm very aware of that and very mindful of that. But one of the things I just wanted to simply cap up is mindfulness can play a very important role in all stages. In the beginning, it can be used to calm ourselves, to still our mind. The second part can be simply to be aware of what we need to do next. The first part is to calm all the emotions involving the crisis, and then the next part is to filter out what is most important, to prioritize using the energy of mindfulness. And then the next after that is, as the next step, as we continue to take action, mindfulness is also there. So this is a question, a wonderful question that we can continue in our Dharma sharing, and we apologize for not being able to receive all of the questions. But we also am aware of the time and our next activities, and this will continue on, not in this format, but in another format. Tomorrow. And a lot of the things will be addressed in the Dharma talk tomorrow, and for helping us to come back. So maybe we can listen to 3 sounds of the bell together. And breathe in deeply. Do we have any announcements? Yeah. So while we